Something about your silence has created a shift far deeper than you realize, and while it may have felt like a simple pause from your side, it did something on their end that they were not prepared for. At first, they didn't take it seriously. They assumed it was temporary, just a phase, just a moment where communication slowed down the way it sometimes does. They told themselves it would pass, that things would naturally go back to how they were without needing any effort. But that didn't happen. Instead of fading into the background, your silence stayed present in their mind. It created a space where your absence became noticeable in ways they couldn't ignore. And in that space, something began to change. When someone is constantly around, even in small ways, it becomes easy to get used to them without fully realizing their value. Conversations feel normal, interactions feel routine, and the connection becomes something that is simply expected to be there. But when that presence is suddenly removed, even quietly, it forces a kind of awareness that wasn't there before. That is exactly what your silence did. It removed the comfort they had gotten used to, and in doing so, it made them notice what was missing. At first, it was subtle. Before we dive into today's word, I want to thank our coffee partners. We are currently working toward a $120 goal to keep this ministry running and improve our quality. If this channel has been a blessing to you, please check the link in the description to support. Now, let's get into today's devotion. Just a thought here and there, a moment where they realized they hadn't heard from you, a small feeling that something was different. But those small moments didn't stay small. They began to repeat. And repetition is what turns a thought into something meaningful. The more it happened, the more they started to think about you, not casually, but with focus. Memories began to come back, not just big moments, but small ones too. The way you spoke, the way conversations flowed, the ease of communication, the sense of understanding that existed without needing explanation. These were things they didn't fully analyze when they were happening. But now, in your absence, they stand out clearly. Silence has a way of amplifying what used to feel ordinary. And what once felt normal now feels important. They may have tried to ignore it at first. Tried to distract themselves with other things, other people, other responsibilities. But distraction doesn't erase something that is rooted in real connection. It only delays the moment when it has to be faced. And that moment is slowly approaching for them. Every time they try to move their attention elsewhere, something brings them back to you. It could be a memory triggered by something small, or a random moment where your name crosses their mind without warning. These are not isolated incidents anymore. They are becoming consistent. And consistency is what makes something impossible to ignore. As this continues, they begin to feel something they didn't expect, a sense of absence that feels heavier than it should. It's not just about missing someone. It's about realizing that the connection they had with you was different from others. They may start comparing without even meaning to. Conversations with others may feel less natural, less engaging, less meaningful. Not because others are lacking, but because what they experienced with you set a certain standard that they didn't fully recognize at the time. And now that it's gone, that difference becomes clear. This realization doesn't come all at once. It builds gradually. One thought leads to another, one memory leads to another, and over time, all of these small pieces connect into a bigger understanding. They begin to see that what they had with you wasn't something ordinary. It had depth, it had ease, it had something real that they didn't fully appreciate when it was present. And now, in your silence, they are being forced to face that truth. At the same time, this awareness starts creating a kind of internal tension. Because once someone realizes the value of something they may be losing, they cannot simply ignore it and move on as if nothing changed. They begin to question themselves. They may start wondering why things became silent, whether they missed something, whether they could have done something differently. These questions don't have immediate answers, but they keep their mind engaged. And the more they think, the more their understanding deepens. You may not see any of this happening. From your side, everything may look the same. There may be no messages, no clear signs, no direct indication that anything has changed. But internal shifts rarely show themselves immediately. They happen quietly, building beneath the surface until they reach a point where they can no longer stay hidden. And that is exactly where they are heading now. Your silence has done something powerful. It has created space for realization. And realization, once it begins, does not stop halfway. It continues to grow until it leads somewhere. Right now, they are still in the stage of understanding, still processing, still connecting the pieces. But they are no longer the same as they were before this silence started. Their perspective has changed. Their awareness has shifted. And the way they see you is no longer casual or undefined. It is becoming clear, and that clarity is what will eventually push them towards something they cannot avoid for much longer. As this realization continues to grow inside them, it begins to take over more of their thoughts in a way they can no longer control, and what once felt like a small awareness now turns into something that demands their full attention. At first, they may still try to convince themselves that it's nothing serious, that it's just a temporary reaction to your silence, something that will pass once time moves forward. They may try to keep themselves busy, filling their time with distractions, conversations, and responsibilities, hoping that their mind will eventually stop going back to you. But instead of fading, the thoughts become more frequent. They don't just appear randomly anymore, they start showing up in moments when they least expect it, interrupting their focus, pulling their attention away from whatever they are doing. This is when they begin to understand that this is not something they can simply ignore. It is something they have to face. Your silence has created a kind of emotional space that forces reflection, and in that reflection, they begin to see things they didn't see before. They start revisiting past interactions, not just remembering them, but analyzing them. Conversations that once felt casual now feel meaningful. Moments that seemed small now carry weight. They may begin to realize that there were signs they overlooked, feelings they didn't fully acknowledge, and opportunities where they could have expressed more but chose not to. This kind of realization doesn't feel comfortable. It brings a mix of emotions, curiosity, regret, confusion, and something deeper that they are still trying to define. The more they think about it, the more they start to recognize a pattern. It's not just one memory that stands out, it's many. And when many moments point in the same direction, it becomes clear that what they shared with you had a level of consistency and authenticity that is not easy to find. This is where their perspective begins to shift in a more serious way. It is no longer about wondering whether the connection mattered. It is about understanding how much it mattered. They may start comparing their experience with you to other interactions in their life, and without even trying, they begin to notice the difference. Conversations with others may feel more forced, less natural, or lacking the ease that existed with you. The way ideas flowed between you, the comfort of speaking openly, the sense of being understood without needing to explain everything, these are things they now recognize as rare. And realizing that something rare may be slipping away creates a different kind of emotional response. It creates urgency. Not sudden panic, but a growing awareness that time matters. That waiting too long could mean losing something they didn't even realize they valued this much. At the same time, this realization begins to create internal conflict. Because even though they are starting to understand what you mean to them, acting on that understanding is not simple. It requires them to step out of their comfort zone. It requires them to be honest, vulnerable, and open in ways they may not have been before. And that can feel intimidating. They may go back and forth in their mind, one moment feeling certain that they should reach out, the next moment hesitating because they are unsure how you will respond. This hesitation is not because they don't care, it is because they do. When something matters, the risk of rejection or misunderstanding feels bigger. But even with this hesitation, the feeling does not go away. In fact, it grows stronger. Because once someone becomes aware of something important, they cannot return to the state of not knowing. They cannot pretend it doesn't exist. They can delay action, but they cannot remove the awareness. And that awareness is what keeps bringing them back to you. They may start imagining what it would be like to reach out, how the conversation might begin, what they would say, how you might respond. These thoughts may feel uncertain, but they also feel necessary. Because the idea of doing nothing is starting to feel more uncomfortable than the idea of taking a risk. And that is where the shift begins. When the discomfort of silence becomes greater than the fear of action, everything changes. You may still not see any visible signs of this yet. From your perspective, everything may still look quiet, unchanged. But internally, they are no longer in the same place. They are moving from awareness into intention. They are no longer just thinking about what happened, they are beginning to think about what to do next. And that transition is important, because once someone starts thinking about action instead of just reflection, it is only a matter of time before something happens. Their emotions are no longer passive. They are active, pushing them toward a decision. And even though that decision has not fully taken shape yet, it is already forming. The silence that once felt like an ending is now becoming the reason for a new beginning, not because you forced it, but because your absence revealed something they could not ignore. As everything continues to build inside them, it reaches a point where it no longer feels like something they can manage quietly, and this is where the shift becomes stronger, more noticeable, and impossible for them to ignore even for a moment. What once started as occasional thoughts has now turned into something constant, something that stays with them throughout the day, no matter what they are doing. They may find themselves losing focus more often, drifting into memories without realizing it, replaying conversations that once seemed ordinary but now feel important. It's not just about remembering you anymore, it's about feeling the absence of what you brought into their life. And that feeling begins to affect them in ways they didn't expect. It shows up in their routine, in their mood, in the way they interact with others. They may appear the same on the outside, but internally, something has shifted completely. They are no longer moving forward without looking back. They are constantly aware of what is missing, even if they cannot fully explain it. This is where the emotional weight starts to grow. Because once absence becomes noticeable on this level, it creates a kind of pressure that cannot stay contained. It is not just about missing someone, it is about realizing that something meaningful has been left unfinished. And unfinished things have a way of pulling attention back to them again and again until they are resolved. This is what keeps bringing their thoughts back to you, no matter how much they try to move on or focus elsewhere. They may try to distract themselves more actively now, filling their time with activities, conversations, or even new connections, hoping that something will replace the space your absence created. But instead of replacing it, these distractions only highlight the difference. They may notice that interactions with others don't carry the same energy, the same ease, or the same depth. Conversations may feel surface level compared to what they experienced with you. And this comparison is not something they choose, it happens naturally, because once someone experiences a certain kind of connection, it becomes a reference point. And now, everything is being measured against that reference. This is the stage where their realization becomes undeniable. They can no longer tell themselves that what they had with you was casual or replaceable. They see clearly now that it was something different, something that stood out without them fully understanding why at the time. And now that it feels like they may have lost it, the importance of it becomes even more clear. This realization creates a strong emotional pull. Not just toward you, but toward action. Because understanding something important without doing anything about it creates discomfort. And that discomfort grows with time. They may start asking themselves deeper questions now, not just about the connection, but about their own behavior. Why didn't they express more? Why did they assume there would always be more time? Why did they allow things to become silent without trying to understand what was happening? These questions may not have easy answers, but they bring something important: accountability. They begin to see their role in how things unfolded, and that awareness creates a desire to change it. To correct it. To do something differently now that they understand what they didn't before. This is where the internal pressure starts to turn into intention. It is no longer just about thinking or feeling. It is about wanting to act. But even at this stage, there is still hesitation. Because acting means stepping into uncertainty. It means not knowing how you will respond, not knowing whether things can be rebuilt, not knowing whether too much time has passed. And that uncertainty creates fear. But the difference now is that the fear of doing nothing is becoming stronger than the fear of taking that risk. They begin to feel that if they don't act, they may regret it. That they may always wonder what could have happened if they had tried. And that feeling is what begins to push them forward. You may not see this process happening, but it is already shaping their next move. They are no longer passive in their thoughts. They are actively considering action, even if they have not taken it yet. They may start imagining what it would be like to reach out, how the conversation would begin, what they would say, how they would explain everything they have been feeling. These thoughts may feel overwhelming, because there is a lot they want to express, and they may not know how to say it in a simple way. But even with that uncertainty, the intention is there. And intention is the first step toward action. This is the stage where everything begins to move toward a decision. The silence that once kept them still is now pushing them forward. The absence that once felt like distance is now creating connection in a different way, through realization, through understanding, through emotion. And once someone reaches this point, it is only a matter of time before that internal shift becomes something visible, something real, something you can no longer ignore either. Now everything inside them is reaching a point where it can no longer stay hidden, and this is where the energy begins to shift from internal struggle to something that is about to become visible in the real world. Up until now, they have been thinking, feeling, analyzing, and going back and forth within themselves, trying to understand what this silence has revealed. But emotions, when they reach a certain intensity, cannot stay contained forever. They start pushing outward. They start demanding expression. And this is exactly where they are now. The silence that once felt manageable has now become heavy, almost uncomfortable, because it constantly reminds them of something unresolved. It is no longer just the absence of communication, it has turned into a presence of unanswered emotions. Every day that passes without action adds more weight to that feeling. They may start feeling restless, unable to fully relax, unable to completely focus on anything for too long without their thoughts drifting back to you. It's like something is unfinished, something is waiting, and that waiting is creating pressure inside them. This pressure is not loud, but it is persistent. It follows them through their day, through their routine, through moments when they are alone and even when they are surrounded by others. And the more it builds, the harder it becomes to ignore. At this stage, they are no longer questioning whether they should do something, they are starting to think about how they will do it. The decision to act is already forming, even if they haven't taken the step yet. They may begin planning what they want to say, thinking about how to approach you, how to break the silence in a way that feels right. But this is not easy for them, because what they feel is not simple. It is layered with memories, realizations, emotions, and even a sense of regret for what they didn't say before. Trying to express all of that in a few words feels overwhelming. They may start writing something and then stop, feeling like it's not enough or not right. They may rehearse conversations in their mind, imagining different outcomes, different reactions from you. This process may repeat multiple times, because they want to get it right. They understand that this moment matters. They know that whatever they do next could change everything. And that awareness makes them careful, but it doesn't stop them. Because even though they hesitate, the urge to act keeps growing stronger. The silence is no longer comfortable for them, it feels like avoidance. And they are starting to realize that avoiding it will not make the feeling disappear. It will only make it stronger. You may begin to notice subtle signs of this shift before anything direct happens. They may become more present in indirect ways, showing curiosity, paying attention from a distance, or finding small ways to stay connected without fully stepping forward yet. These are early signs that the internal shift is beginning to show externally. They are testing the space, feeling the distance, trying to understand how things might unfold if they take that next step. At the same time, their emotions are becoming clearer than ever. What once felt confusing is now defined. They know that what they feel is real. They know that the connection mattered. And they know that ignoring it is no longer an option. This clarity removes the biggest barrier they had before, uncertainty. And once uncertainty is gone, action becomes inevitable. It may still take a little time, but the direction is already set. They are no longer moving away from you, they are moving toward you, even if it is happening slowly at first. The intensity of what they are feeling may also surprise them, because they may not have expected it to reach this level. They may not have realized how much your presence affected them until it was no longer there. And now that they see it clearly, it changes how they view everything. This is no longer something casual or temporary. It is something that requires attention, honesty, and courage. And that is why what they are about to do will not be small or insignificant. It will carry the weight of everything they have been holding inside. It may feel sudden when it happens, but it is not sudden at all, it is the result of everything that has been building over time. Right now, they are standing at the edge of that moment. The hesitation is still there, but it is weakening with every passing thought. The realization is strong. The emotions are clear. And the need to act is becoming impossible to ignore. What comes next is not a question of if. It is a question of when. Now everything inside them has reached a point where holding back no longer feels possible, and this is where the energy becomes intense, almost overwhelming for them, because what they have been suppressing for so long is now pushing to be expressed all at once. Up until this moment, they have tried to manage it, to keep it controlled, to convince themselves that they could wait a little longer, think a little more, prepare a little better before doing anything. But emotions do not follow that kind of control forever. When something meaningful is left unspoken for too long, it builds pressure, and that pressure eventually needs release. That is exactly where they are now. The silence that once felt like distance has now turned into something urgent. It is no longer something they can sit with comfortably. It feels like something that needs to be broken, something that needs to be addressed before it becomes a permanent loss. And this is what changes everything. They may suddenly feel a strong wave of clarity, as if everything they have been thinking about finally comes together into one undeniable truth: you matter to them in a way they did not fully understand before. And once that truth becomes clear, it becomes impossible to ignore or push aside. This is the moment where hesitation begins to collapse. The fear of reaching out, the fear of being vulnerable, the fear of not knowing how you will respond. All of that still exists, but it is no longer stronger than the need to act. In fact, the fear of doing nothing has now become greater. Because doing nothing means accepting that this connection might fade completely, and they are no longer willing to let that happen without trying. This is the turning point. When someone becomes more afraid of losing something than of risking their comfort, action becomes inevitable. And that action may not look the way you expect. It may feel sudden, intense, or even out of character for them. Because when emotions build for a long time, they do not come out slowly or perfectly, they come out all at once, with intensity and urgency. This is why what they are about to do may feel crazy from your perspective. Not because it is truly irrational, but because it carries so much emotion that it breaks the pattern of how they usually behave. They may reach out in a way that is more direct than you have ever seen from them before. They may express things they once avoided, say things they never said, or take a step they once would have been too cautious to take. This is not impulsive in the sense of being meaningless. It is the result of everything they have been holding back finally reaching the surface. At the same time, there is vulnerability beneath that action. Even if they appear confident or bold in the way they approach you, there is uncertainty underneath it. They do not know how you will respond. They do not know if the connection can be rebuilt or if too much time has passed. They do not know whether you feel the same way now as you did before. And that uncertainty creates risk. But they are willing to take that risk now, because staying silent feels like a bigger loss. You may also notice a difference in their energy when they reach out. There may be urgency in their words, a depth in their tone, a level of honesty that feels different from how they communicated before. This is because they are no longer holding back. They are no longer filtering everything through caution. They are expressing what they feel as it is, without trying to control how it appears. And that rawness is what makes the moment feel intense. It is not just communication, it is an emotional release. But this moment is not only about them. It is also about you. Because while they are acting from a place of built-up emotion, you are in a position where you can choose how to respond with clarity. You are not required to match their urgency. You are not required to react immediately or get pulled into the intensity of the moment. Your strength is in staying grounded, in understanding what is happening without losing your balance in it. Their action is the result of everything they have been holding inside. Your response does not need to come from the same place. You have the ability to observe, to process, and to respond in a way that aligns with your own clarity. And that is what will shape what happens next. This moment may feel unexpected, emotional, even overwhelming, but it is also a moment of truth. A moment where everything that was hidden is now visible. And once it becomes visible, it changes the direction of everything that follows. Now everything reaches the point where what has been building inside them finally meets reality, and this is where the situation truly transforms, because the moment they act, the silence no longer exists in the same way, it breaks, and everything that was hidden behind it comes forward all at once. Up until now, everything has been happening internally for them, the thoughts, the memories, the realizations, the emotional pressure that kept growing day by day. But once they take that step, once they reach out or do something that expresses what they feel, all of that internal energy becomes external. It is no longer something they carry alone. It becomes something shared between both of you again. And that shift changes everything. What once existed only in their mind now becomes real in your world too. This is the moment where you may feel the intensity of what they have been going through, even if you didn't see it building up. Because what feels sudden to you has been forming inside them for a long time. It may come through in the way they communicate, in the urgency of their words, in the honesty that may feel unexpected or even overwhelming. They may not express everything perfectly. They may not have the exact words to explain everything clearly. But what they will show you is real. It is not something casual or surface level. It is something that has been building for a long time and has finally reached a point where it could no longer stay hidden. At the same time, this moment brings you into a position of choice. Because while they are acting from a place of emotional buildup, you are stepping into this situation from a place of awareness. You have not been going through the exact same internal process at the same time. You have had your own experience of the silence, your own understanding of the distance, your own perspective that may have shifted in a different way. And that means your response will not come from the same place as theirs. This is important, because it allows you to remain grounded while everything around you feels intense. You may feel surprised when this happens, especially if you have adjusted to the silence and no longer expected anything to change. The sudden shift from silence to action can feel like a lot to process at once. But this is where your clarity matters. You do not need to react immediately. You do not need to match their urgency or mirror their emotional intensity. Instead, you can take a moment to understand what is being expressed. Because often, what they are trying to communicate goes deeper than the words they use. It is not just about what they say, it is about what led them to say it. It is about the realization they went through, the emotions they held back, and the clarity they reached before taking this step. When you understand that, the moment becomes easier to navigate. You may also begin to reflect on your own feelings in that moment. Because their action does not just reveal something about them, it also reveals something about you. It shows you where you stand now, how you feel about the connection, and whether what they are expressing aligns with what you feel at this stage. You may realize that your perspective has changed during the silence. Or you may feel that something is still there, something worth understanding further. Either way, your response will come from your own clarity, not from their intensity. This is what makes this moment powerful. It is not just about their action, it is about your awareness meeting their realization. At the same time, there may be a temptation to respond quickly, especially if their words or actions carry a lot of emotion. But this is where patience becomes important. You are not required to decide everything in one moment. You are allowed to take time, to process, to understand what this means for you before responding. Because the way you respond will shape what happens next. This is not a moment of pressure, it is a moment of choice. You are not being forced into anything. You are being given clarity, information, and an opportunity to respond in a way that aligns with your own understanding. And that is what defines this stage. It is no longer about what they will do, that part has already happened or is about to happen. It is about what you will do with what has been revealed. Because once the silence is broken and everything is out in the open, there is no going back to how things were before. The dynamic has changed. The truth is visible. And now, everything that follows will be shaped by the choices made in this exact moment. Now everything settles into a place where the intensity that once felt overwhelming begins to transform into clarity, and this is where you start to fully understand not just what happened, but why it happened and what it means for you moving forward. What began as silence, something that may have felt confusing or even insignificant at first, has now revealed its true purpose. It was never just about distance or lack of communication. It was about creating space for realization, for both of you, but in very different ways. For them, it forced emotions to surface that they had not fully acknowledged before. For you, it created an opportunity to step back, observe, and gain awareness without being pulled into the intensity of constant interaction. And now that everything has come forward, you are no longer in a place of uncertainty. You can see the connection more clearly than ever before. You can understand what was real, what was overlooked, and what has now been revealed. The actions they took, the way they broke the silence, the intensity behind it, all of it now makes sense when you see the process that led to it. It was not sudden, even if it felt that way to you. It was built over time, through thoughts, memories, and realizations that gradually pushed them to a point where they could no longer stay silent. And now that they have acted, everything is out in the open. There is no more guessing, no more wondering what they feel or what they might do. That uncertainty is gone. And when uncertainty disappears, something else takes its place: clarity. You may now find yourself looking at the situation from a different perspective. Instead of focusing on the intensity of their actions, you begin to focus on what it means. You begin to understand that their behavior is not just about emotion, but about realization. It is about them finally seeing something they did not fully see before. And that understanding allows you to step back from the emotional intensity and look at the situation with a clearer mind. At the same time, this moment is not only about them. It is also about you and how you have changed during this process. The silence did not only affect them, it affected you too. It gave you time to think, to feel, to understand your own position without being influenced by their presence. And because of that, you are now in a place where your response is not driven by impulse, but by awareness. You are able to see both sides, their realization and your own experience, and bring those together into a clearer understanding of what this connection means now. You may realize that your feelings are not exactly the same as they were before. Time and distance have a way of changing perspective. You may feel that something is still there, something worth exploring now that everything is clear. Or you may feel that while the connection was real, it no longer fits in the same way it once did. Both of these realizations are valid, because what matters is not what existed in the past, it is what exists now. And this is where your power lies. You are not being pulled into a situation you do not understand. You are standing in a position where you can choose, based on clarity, not confusion. This is no longer about reacting to what they did. It is about deciding what you want to do with what has been revealed. You may also begin to feel a sense of calm replacing the intensity that once surrounded this situation. Not because everything is perfectly resolved, but because you are no longer uncertain. You are no longer questioning what this connection means or where it stands. You have seen it from both sides, and that understanding removes the confusion that once existed. And when confusion is removed, peace begins to take its place. As you move forward from here, you carry something valuable with you, not just the experience, but the awareness that came from it. You now understand how silence can reveal truth, how absence can create realization, and how emotions that are left unspoken do not disappear, they grow until they are expressed. And this understanding will stay with you, shaping how you approach future connections, how you communicate, and how you recognize what is real and meaningful. This moment was not just about them breaking the silence. It was about both of you reaching a point where everything became clear. And now that it is clear, the next step is entirely yours. Now everything has come to a point where the intensity, the confusion, the questions, and the emotional weight all begin to settle into something much more stable, something that no longer feels overwhelming but instead feels clear, grounded, and fully understood. What started as silence, something that may have seemed small or even insignificant in the beginning, has now revealed itself as a powerful turning point. It created distance, but within that distance, it also created awareness. Awareness that neither of you had when everything was normal and comfortable. Because when things flow easily, when communication is constant, there is rarely a reason to stop and question what something truly means. But the moment that flow is interrupted, everything changes. The absence of something reveals its value in a way that presence sometimes cannot. And that is exactly what happened here. Your silence did not just create a gap, it created a realization. For them, it brought forward emotions they had not fully acknowledged. It made them see the connection in a way they never had before. It forced them to recognize what was always there but never fully expressed. And for you, it created space to step back, to observe, to understand the connection without being influenced by ongoing interaction. It gave you clarity in a different way. And now, as everything has unfolded, you are both standing in a place where nothing is hidden anymore. The silence has been broken, the truth has been revealed, and the situation is no longer something uncertain or undefined. You now see clearly what once felt confusing. You understand what led to this moment, how their emotions built over time, how their realization formed, and why they acted the way they did. And at the same time, you understand yourself, how you felt during the silence, how your perspective may have shifted, and what this connection means to you now. This is where everything changes. Because you are no longer reacting to something you do not understand. You are making a choice based on clarity. And that is what gives you control, not control over the situation itself, but control over your direction within it. You may now begin to feel a sense of calm that replaces the intensity that once surrounded everything. Not because the situation is simple, but because it is clear. There is no more guessing, no more wondering what they feel or what they might do. You have seen it. You have experienced it. And that removes the uncertainty that once created tension. When uncertainty disappears, peace begins to take its place. And that peace allows you to think clearly, to feel honestly, and to choose without pressure. You may realize that the connection still holds meaning for you, that there is something worth exploring now that everything is out in the open. Or you may realize that while the connection was real, it belonged to a different time, a different version of you, and it no longer fits in the same way. Both realizations are valid, because the purpose of this moment was not to force a specific outcome. It was to bring clarity. And once clarity is present, the outcome becomes your decision. You are not being pulled into something blindly. You are stepping into something with full awareness. You may also begin to understand something deeper about connections themselves, that timing matters, that awareness does not always come at the same moment for both people, and that sometimes distance is what allows truth to surface. This does not make the connection weaker. In many ways, it makes it more real, because it has been tested, revealed, and understood in a way that simple, easy interaction could never achieve. And this understanding will stay with you, shaping how you approach future relationships, how you communicate, and how you recognize what is meaningful and what is not. As you move forward from here, you do so with something you did not have before, certainty within yourself. Not certainty about what will happen next, but certainty about your ability to choose, to understand, and to respond in a way that aligns with who you are now. And that is what matters most. Because no matter what direction this situation takes, you are no longer in a place of confusion. You are in a place of clarity. And clarity is what allows you to move forward with confidence, with calm, and with the understanding that whatever comes next will not be something that happens to you, it will be something you choose.